Welcome to another episode of my Wheel of Time reread on Reading the Pattern. We'll be talking about The Eye of the World chapters 31 through 34, in which Rand has to decide if he's more terrified of dark friends or a lascivious farmer's daughter.
This video may include spoilers for all Wheel of Time books. If you have not finished reading the series and do not want to be massively spoiled, stop here or proceed at your own risk.
Rand and Mat make their way from Whitebridge to Camelin following the road, stopping at farms and village inns and getting rides whenever they can.
Let's review the notebook of our favorite Ogier to remind ourselves what happened in these chapters.
Rand and Mat start off on the road to Camelin walking, mostly going without food or shelter and constantly checking behind them for any sign of Tom or a Fade. They start offering to do chores at farms they pass in exchange for meals and a hayloft to sleep in. They sometimes get the dogs set on them, though, especially when Mat is acting more and more suspicious and protective of his ruby-hilted dagger. At the Grinwell farm, the eldest daughter, Els, makes an open play for Rand. Rand and Mat try out their flute playing and juggling and get such a positive response that they start offering to perform at village inns instead, in exchange for room and board for the night. They move faster this way, often getting rides in between villages. On a stormy night, they arrive in a rough village called Four Kings, where only the roughest inn, the Dancing Cartman, is without entertainment. The skinny and nasty innkeeper, Samuel Hake, agrees to take them on for the night, but he casually abuses his serving women and openly appears to covet Rand's sword and Tom's flute.
While Rand and Mat perform, Rand notices a fat, richly dressed man staring at them.
While they're eating in the kitchen, they overhear gossip about the man, and Rand realizes he must have come to Four Kings specifically after them. Rand learns his name, Howell Goad, and deduces that he must be from Whitebridge. Rand and Mat are caught between Hake and his thugs, and Howell Goad smiling knowingly at them, and then frowning since Rand now openly wears his sword. They're finally allowed to go to their pallets in a room with a barred window. Rand and Mat attempt to block the door once they're left alone. And as they are trying to break open the bars on the window, Goad attempts to get into the room, claiming to know what they are and that they already belong to his master, the Great Lord of the Dark. Goad pleads, threatens, and eventually tries breaking in. Rand thinks desperately of a way out, and then lightning strikes, leaving a gigantic hole in the wall, and they are able to escape out into the stormy night. Mat and Rand travel in the back of a wagon, with Rand getting over a sudden sickness and Mat still seeing poorly after the lightning strike. The driver, Chaim Kinch, is kind to them, offering to let them rest on his farm, but Mat turns him away with his rude suspicion. Rand thinks back over everything that has happened to them since they left Four Kings.
First, they slept outside in the rain, and Rand dreamt of a dead Howell Goad and Baalzamon, who says that Goad had found them for him.
Baalzamon claims to mark Rand as his, and Rand wakes just as a ball of flame is about to strike his face, and he feels as if his face was actually sunburned. Mat clearly has been dreaming of Baalzamon as well. They walk on and get a ride from Alpert Mull, who gives them each a woolen scarf, seeming to wish he could do more for them. They spend the next night at an inn in Market Sharon, but they have to pay for it since they are in no condition to perform. Over breakfast the next morning, a young man named Pater approaches them, uncertainly, saying someone is making him do it. Mat immediately accuses him of being a dark friend, and Pater admits it. Pater tries to stop them from leaving, and Rand punches him in the face. Pater openly threatens them, outing himself as a dark friend. They offer to perform in the next village, since they cannot afford to pay, but Rand quickly becomes ill with fever and chills. Mat manages to secure them a place in the stable and some food, and Rand has hallucinations through the night while Mat watches over him. In the morning, a woman enters the stable and offers to help Rand right before she attempts to stab Mat. Mat manages to disarm her and considers killing her until Rand convinces him not to. She tries to convince them to give in to the Great Lord of the Dark and threatens them with a murderall. They leave, but can barely walk, and then Chaim Kinch picks them up, bringing us back to the place they are at the beginning of the chapter. Rand and Mat pass through a village and keep going until Mat refuses to go further and they find a haystack to sleep in. As they continue on the next day, they encounter more and more people traveling on foot towards Camelin to see the dragon. Queen's guards, merchants' wagons, and locals are all annoyed and suspicious of the travelers, so no one will give them a ride anymore. They also don't dare trying to perform, since dark friends might know them that way. They make it to a village at night and try to make it through to the other side before stopping, but they come upon some men and decide to hide out of sight rather than continuing on and allowing themselves to be seen. Two men talking near the shadows make Rand very uneasy. Eventually he notices that one man's cloak does not move in the wind and realizes that it is a fade. The fade is gone, but the man who had been talking to it turns out to be an innkeeper, and he is stopped by a third man named Almond Bunt, who is packing up his cart nearby. The innkeeper tells Bunt that his friend is looking for two young men who had stolen a heron-marked sword from Four Kings and is offering a reward for their capture.
Bunt seems to scoff at the innkeeper and spurns the mention of his friend. The boys find out that Bunt is planning to drive to Camelin by night to avoid the crowds, and they take the chance of revealing themselves to him to try to get a ride.
Bunt agrees and tucks their ears off the whole way. Through Bunt, we learn about an Aes Sedai named Elida, who advises the Queen Morghese, and also a good deal about the royal family, including the daughter heir Elaine and her brother Gawain, the first prince of the sword. Rand falls asleep, dreaming about all of his friends in the shadow. When he wakes, they are finally in Camelin.
Let's take a look at all the fascinating details and hints of what is to come in Robert Jordan's master plan.
These chapters are chock full of minor characters who make later unexpected returns in the series. There's Els Grinwell, who is so taken by Rand, she is stirred to leave her family's farm and go to Tar Valon, where it will turn out she has the ability to channel. It will also turn out that being more interested in men than channeling doesn't lead to much success in the White Tower. Two of the dark friends we meet show up again. The young boy Pater actually attempts to help Queen Morghese when she's a captive of the White Cloaks and is hanged for his troubles. Millie Skane is the name of the female dark friend who attempts to kill Mat and Rand, and she shows up again multiple times throughout the series, managing to make a lot of trouble in Ebu Dar and Camelin, posing as Lady Shiane. Then there's the last farmer to give the boys a ride, Almond Bunt, and he shows up again twice. First, Rand meets him at an apple orchard, and then Mat sees him on the field of Marilor, right before the last battle. Rand channels for the third time in Four Kings, and it seems to be far more powerful than his previous successes. I love the way Robert Jordan manages to obscure this fairly noticeable bit of channeling. Rand is able to call down lightning to blast open a hole in the wall of their cell at the Dancing Cartman. This is clear from the way he thinks strongly of a way out right before it happens, and his sudden sickness following this night. But the frequent mention of how stormy the night is, along with the fact that the guys end up out in the storm, provide a plausible explanation for both the lightning and the sickness. There's another hint that Rand can channel in the dream when Balsamon tells him, "What protects you makes you vulnerable. First you hide from me, then you light a signal fire." In hindsight, this is clearly a reference to Rand's ability. There are a lot of subtle hints about the effect of Mat's dagger throughout this sequence. Most noticeable is the way that Mat himself is acting. On the one hand, we kind of understand why he's so suspicious given their circumstances, but it's the way he seems to be rubbing off on people that's most telling. It really seems out of place for farmers to be driving them off in the middle of them working and having their dogs chase them for miles when they haven't actually done anything. And then Mat almost pulls his bow and attempts to shoot them. This is definitely dagger work. For Mat, there's also a bunch of foreshadowing for the later loss of his eye. First, he temporarily loses his eyesight in the lightning strike and has to walk around with a scarf over his eyes. And then we hear him calling out to Baalzamon that he took his eye during a dream. Lastly, there's actually a ton of knowledge dropped by Bunt on the ride to Camelin,
including a short version of what led to Rand's birth, with his mother Tigraine, the former daughter heir of Andor, running off, and the start of the Aiel War, which would lead her to give birth on Dragon Mount.
Immediately after this, Rand falls into a dream in which Tom tells him that the queen is wed to the land, and the dragon is one with the land. Nice foreshadowing for Rand as the dragon, and also the dragon's effect on the land, as well as his eventual marriage of a sort to the queen, Elaine. In the same dream, Rand also dreams about all of his friends, Tom, Moiraine, Lan, Perrin, Mat, and Egwene. And only Egwene dies. And this too is foreshadowing, I'm afraid.
Let's discuss the central themes and focal points that these chapters are woven around.
One of the things I find Robert Jordan did exceptionally well as a writer is to put you firmly in the shoes of the character whose POV you are reading. So when initially Rand is suspicious of Moraine or anxious to know if he can trust her, so are we. Later on, when characters feel cooped up and irritated with each other, we're probably irritated with them too. This set of chapters probably exemplifies this skill as much as any. Rand and Mat feel besieged and desperately alone in these chapters. Rand also loses a clear sense of time between the sameness of sleeping in haystacks, working on farms, getting rides in farmers' carts, and performing at village inns, etc. Add on to that his bout of channeling sickness, and the exact sequence of events becomes extremely hazy for him. Robert Jordan manages to create that same sense of disorientation in the reader, to the extent that some readers even question if he had messed up by repeating some passages or putting things out of order. Nope, that was deliberate, and it manages to make us feel hazy enough that we get a glimpse of how uncomfortable that would be for Rand.
He also effectively ramps up the tension, and just as Rand and Mat do, we keep dreading what else awaits them at the next village.
And finally, there's this other theme that he weaves in often about the way rumors evolve over time and space. And we see a little bit of that in real time here as the rumors about dark friends follow them on the road.
Let's break down the characters and their defining moments in these chapters.
Obviously, we have to spend some time talking about both Rand and Mat, since these chapters are all about the two of them. It is Rand who takes the lead in keeping them going, no matter how bleak their circumstances are. He is the one who seems to be paying attention and noticing where the actual dangers lie. He does dwell a bit on home and morbidly think about how he'll never see it again. Some of that might actually be the influence of Mat's dagger, but some of it's definitely his own fear as well. And Rand shows this attachment to Tam's sword as a tangible connection to what he has lost. But to me, there are two things that show the clearest signs of who Rand really is.
First, he continues to stick by Mat's side and comfort him, no matter how Mat acts. He provides nearly constant support to keep Mat going.
Secondly, there are multiple instances of Rand just refusing to give in to pressure, whether it is from dark friends or Hake the innkeeper who tries to bully him, or Ba'alzamon himself. Rand just has a backbone of steel, even at this point. Mat, on the other hand, is clearly not himself and growing increasingly paranoid and trusting only in Rand. Children manage to put him at his ease somewhat, but otherwise he practically snarls at everyone they meet. He also seems unable to fully attend to what's happening around them or how people are responding to him. This is Mat at nearly his worst, and it's only on reread that we understand it's the work of the dagger. On my first read, I was still pretty frustrated with Mat for being a nearly constant drain on Rand. On the other hand, Mat really does step up to take care of Rand when he gets sick. He shows his resourcefulness in being able to pressure the innkeeper at the Queen's Man to give them a place in the stables, with the threat of bringing Rand into the common room and scaring away the patrons. It's also impressive that he manages to disarm Millie Skane, who turns out to be a skilled assassin, but she probably underestimated him.
Finally, I think the fact that Mat doesn't start to distrust Rand here says a lot about their bond of friendship being more powerful than the dagger. Let's talk about what we need to know about the Dark One and all of his minions and followers.
Of course, we have to talk about dark friends. In these chapters, we meet the first dark friends that we're aware of. We have met Padan Fain, perhaps the consummate dark friend, but we and the characters weren't aware of that at the time. So we meet Howell Goad, and Rand can immediately sense something wrong with him. Clearly he's done well for himself in this life, and perhaps that's some reward for his allegiance. But it's interesting to find out how much he doesn't know, even though he's been tasked with tracking down the Dragon Reborn and one of his most important allies. The most likely conclusion, based on what Moraine later tells us about the dagger, is that the sense of evil from the dagger would be enough to draw dark friends who are deep in the shadow to them. Goad pretty much confirms this when he says he senses something rolling off of them. And this seems to be how all three of the dark friends are aware that they've found who they're looking for. As for Goad, we get a glimpse of how valued dark friends are by the Forsaken and by extension the Dark One, when Ishamael kills Goad, and we see that Goad is shocked and horrified in his last moments. Clearly, he doesn't seem to be getting whatever rewards he was promised. In contrast somewhat to Goad, the young man Pater doesn't trigger any alarm bells for Rand. What makes him disturbing is that he seems just like any other young village man, though he is well dressed. He doesn't really seem to have any savvy when it comes to how he approaches Rand and Mat, and he isn't all that threatening. But he does expose us to the fear that dark friends can just easily blend in, and that people we would never suspect might have sold their soul to the shadow, and for reasons we can't even fathom. Finally, we have Millie Skane, and the only thing she seems to have in common with the previous two is that she also is richly dressed. She will turn out to be a skilled and well-placed assassin, and she's definitely the most savvy and dangerous of the three we meet here. So what can we conclude so far? Becoming a dark friend might lead to rewards in terms of wealth, but it's not likely to lead to being let in on the Dark One's plans. There seem to be some internal changes that can take place when someone is deep in the shadow, but not necessarily external ones.
Most importantly, anyone who serves the Dark One expecting immortality probably shouldn't have decided to trust someone known as the Father of Lies. And lastly, some dark friends are much more dangerous than others. And now, let's find a little levity amidst the darkness.
So the atmosphere in these chapters is extremely tense, and there is not a lot of humor to be found. But Robert Jordan did know that there is a need to periodically break up the tension with a lighter sequence, and the interlude at the Grinwell farm does do that. So there's the over-the-top way that Els flirts with Rand, chewing on the end of her pigtail like, "I like a tall man." And then Rand, of course, has no idea what to do with that. But the best part is Mistress Grinwell, who insists that Els share a bed with her that night so she doesn't sneak off into Rand's in the middle of the night. I see you, Mistress Grinwell, and I like your style. Thank you guys for continuing on with me in this reread of The Wheel of Time. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss my next episode in the series, which will cover The Eye of the World chapters 35 through 40. I want to hear what your favorite bits are from these chapters, so don't forget to hit me up in the comments. And whether or not you like tall men, be sure to stick around for more Wheel of Time content, including speculation for the Wheel of Time TV series. See you next time in Camelin.